I want you to imagine something for a second. Think about your biggest achievement, like the thing you are the most proud of in your entire life.
Right, that one defining milestone.
Exactly. Now, what if the person who helped build the foundation for that dream, the exact person you once loved, was also the person who seemingly betrayed you in the worst possible way?
That is a brutal scenario.
It really is. But what if fate suddenly placed that very same person in front of you years later, right when you least expected it? And what if that one random meeting completely shattered everything you thought you knew about your own life?
It forces a complete psychological reckoning, really.
Yeah.
You are suddenly faced with this ultimate collision of past and present.
Yeah.
And you realize the narrative you've been telling yourself for years might be, well, a complete fiction.
And that is the exact collision we are unpacking today. Welcome to this deep dive. We are exploring a remarkably intense narrative known as the Court of Mahadev.
It's such a powerful account.
It really is. It follows the deeply intertwined lives of two people, Shalini and Raghav. And our mission for this deep dive is to basically tear down the surface of this story. We want to understand the actual mechanics of sacrifice, the weight of these devastating misunderstandings, and, a very unexpected definition of justice.
Which is so needed here. What's fascinating here is that it is incredibly tempting to read this account as just a standard, albeit tragic, romance.
Right, like a movie plot.
Exactly.
Oh.
But doing that completely misses the psychological depth of the situation. I mean, this is essentially a case study in how humans navigate impossible lose-lose choices.
Especially when they're placed in the pressure cooker of societal expectations.
Precisely. It's an exploration of how sacrifice actually operates out in the real world.
Okay, let's unpack this, because
Yeah.
we need to set the baseline and go back 10 years. So Shalini and Raghav are living a fairly modest life in a small town.
Very modest, yeah.
But Shalini harbors this massive overarching ambition. She wants to become an administrative officer.
And we should probably clarify what that means for people who might not know.
Oh, definitely. For those listening who might not be familiar with that specific career path, becoming a civil servant or an administrative officer in this context, it is not just applying for a job.
No, not at all.
It is a grueling, multi-year intellectual marathon. I mean, the exams have a pass rate of a fraction of a percent.
It requires absolute monastic dedication. You're competing against hundreds of thousands of people for just a handful of spots.
Exactly. And that level of singular focus, it requires a massive infrastructure of support. You cannot work a full-time job, manage a household, and, prepare for an exam of that magnitude simultaneously.
You really can't. It requires immense resources.
Yeah.
Time, money, and perhaps most importantly, emotional bandwidth.
Yeah, someone has to absorb the daily friction of life so the candidate can focus entirely on cognitive performance.
And that is exactly where Raghav comes in. He becomes that vital infrastructure.
He really does. He works at a factory. The pay is modest, but his commitment to her goal is just absolute. He pours his savings into her educational materials.
He's taking on extra shift to keep them afloat, too.
Right. He literally stays awake through the night just to help her study, making sure she doesn't lose momentum. When I was looking over the details of their early life, I immediately thought of Raghav as an emotional venture capitalist.
An emotional venture capitalist. That is a highly accurate way to frame it, actually.
You think so?
Yeah. I mean, he is identifying a high potential asset, her intellect and her ambition, and he is providing the seed funding, both literally and emotionally.
Knowing that the return on investment will alter both of their lives.
Exactly. He is trading his grueling physical labor to buy her the mental space for this high-stakes intellectual dream. It's this incredibly functional, beautiful symbiosis.
But then the foundation completely cracks.
Tragically, yes.
And a machine malfunctions at the factory. And in a single violent, devastating moment, Raghav loses both of his legs.
It's just horrific.
He survives, but he is permanently confined to a wheelchair. And my major question here is about the suddenness of that shift. How does an instantaneous physical trauma of that magnitude completely rewrite the underlying power dynamic of a marriage?
Well, it bankrupts his entire sense of self-worth almost overnight.
Wow.
Because think about it, in a traditional dynamic, particularly one where they've structured their entire existence around his physical labor supporting her cognitive labor, his utility is tied to his ability to provide.
Right, he was the provider.
So it isn't merely the devastating physical loss of his mobility. For Raghav, It's the instantaneous evaporation of his identity.
He loses his role as the protector, the enabler, the engine powering her ambition just violently stalls out.
And psychologically, the person who was the caretaker now requires total intensive care.
Which is a massive flip.
It's an incredibly difficult transition for any human being to process under the best of circumstances. But to process it while grappling with acute physical trauma and the loss of independence, it's almost unimaginable.
He goes from being the bedrock of the family to feeling like a liability.
Exactly.
Which brings us directly to the outside world. Because physical trauma is never isolated. It almost always acts as a giant magnet for community opinions.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone has something to say.
Right. And Shalini, to her immense credit, she doesn't run. She wants to stand by him, to be the caretaker now. But the societal pressure surrounding them begins to, well, suffocate that noble intention.
The whispers start.
The whispers. Relatives and neighbors start whispering these incredibly insidious things. They pull Shalini aside and tell her that her life is effectively ruined if she stays tethered to a disabled husband.
And they don't stop there.
No. Then they go to Raghav and they plant these highly destructive seeds, telling him that Shalini is young, brilliant, and deserves a much better future than pushing his wheelchair.
We have to look closely at how communal guilt operates in traditional structures here. Society rarely handles vulnerability well.
Yeah, they really don't.
And community gossip often disguises profound cruelty as concern.
Oh, that is such a good point. We're just worried about you.
Exactly. They aren't just expressing opinions, they are actively enforcing a social order.
So Raghav listens to all this quiet, constant pressure. He absorbs it. And then he makes a choice. He sits Shalini down and tells her something that completely shatters her reality.
It's a devastating moment.
He looks at the woman he has supported for years and tells her he doesn't love her anymore. He claims he wants to marry a wealthy woman and live a completely different, easier life.
Which is just, it's completely out of left field for her.
She is absolutely blindsided. The man she trusts most in the entire world suddenly morphs into a cruel, selfish monster right before her eyes. Heartbroken, humiliated, and deeply angry, she walks away. They divorce.
The break is final.
Yeah. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, because I have to push back against Raghav's strategy here.
Okay, let's hear it.
Was this lie actually a massive failure of trust? By choosing to play the villain, didn't Raghav wildly underestimate Shalini's capacity to love him through the hardship? I mean, he didn't even give her the agency to choose the struggle.
That is a very valid critique on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
It completely strips her of her agency in the relationship.
Right.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture and analyze the mechanics of the societal pressure they were facing, we can see how society essentially weaponizes a person's devotion against them.
Weaponizes their devotion? How so?
Well, Raghav understood the social gravity they were trapped in. If he simply asked her to leave because he felt he was a burden, what would she do?
She would refuse. She would stay out of love and duty.
She would stay. But think about the long-term reality of that choice. If she stays out of love, over time, society would make sure she felt the suffocating weight of that decision. She would inevitably miss her exams. She would transition into a full-time caregiver. The dream they both worked so hard for would slowly die in that small house.
Because of the environment.
Right. And conversely, if she ever did decide to leave him honestly to pursue her career, society would brand her as the cruel, ambitious wife who abandoned her disabled husband in his darkest hour. She would be crushed by community guilt.
Wait, so the trap is that no matter what honest choice she makes, society will punish her.
Exactly.
If she stays, she loses her future. If she leaves, she loses her moral standing and is consumed by guilt.
Precisely. The social gravity would pull her down either way. He had to violently push her away so she could reach escape velocity.
Escape velocity, wow.
Raghav's lie was engineered to surgically remove Shalini's guilt. If he made himself the villain, if he spun this narrative that he was selfish and greedy, she wouldn't feel an ounce of guilt leaving him.
Because she's just escaping a bad situation.
By making her hate him, he provided her with the only socially acceptable exit strategy. A clean, guilt-free break to pursue her ambitions without ever looking back over her shoulder.
He absorbed every single drop of the social stigma of being the bad guy, so her reputation and her conscience could remain completely spotless.
He took the hit, all of it.
But the wild part of this dynamic is that this manufactured hatred worked. It acted as the exact rocket fuel Shalini needed to achieve the statistically impossible. I mean, have you ever used a devastating breakup or a massive professional failure as fuel?
Oh, we all have in some way, right?
It is an incredibly potent force.
It is. Let's look at the divergent paths their lives take over the next several years, because it perfectly illustrates the psychology of unresolved betrayal.
Yeah, so following the divorce, Shalini takes all of that humiliation, all of that heartbreak, and she buries it entirely in her studies. She works with a level of ferocity she didn't have before, and she actually clears the massive hurdle.
She achieves the dream.
She becomes the district magistrate, the DM. And we need to clarify what that means, because it's not just a desk job. A district magistrate in this context is the absolute pinnacle of local government power.
You are practically the ruler of a district.
Commanding police forces, managing massive bureaucracies, and making decisions for millions of people. So to the outside world, she projects this image of being an unshakable, highly confident, incredibly powerful woman.
But internally?
Internally, she's still carrying these massive, unhealed wounds from Raghav's betrayal. I couldn't help but view her massive success as a spite-fueled rocket ship.
Spite-fueled rocket ship. Well, spite as a motivator is fascinating because it is highly effective, yet incredibly corrosive.
Corrosive is a good word for it.
When someone we deeply love betrays us without a logical explanation, the cognitive dissonance is agonizing. Shalini couldn't process why the man who sacrificed everything for her would suddenly abandon her out of greed.
It just didn't compute.
To protect herself from that agonizing confusion, she built a fortress of absolute professional success. Her power, her title, her entire status as a district magistrate was actually a monument to the trauma Raghav caused her.
A monument to the trauma. That frames her entire career differently. Because the ultimate irony here, and the thing that really gave me pause, is that she has absolutely no idea she's fulfilling his master plan.
She has no clue.
She wakes up every day thinking she is succeeding in spite of him, to prove him wrong, but in reality she is succeeding entirely because of him.
The emotional venture capitalist saw his investment mature to its absolute highest potential, even though he had intentionally barred himself from being in the room to celebrate the return.
Which sets the stage for their inevitable collision. These two wildly divergent paths, the incredibly powerful government officer and the severely disabled ex-husband, are drawn back together.
By pure fate.
Fate orchestrates this reunion at a highly specific geographic and spiritual choke point. It's the holy month of Sawan at Baidyanath Dham in Deogar.
And we really need to explain the immense cultural and physical weight of that specific setting. For our listeners who might not be familiar, Mahadev is another name for Lord Shiva, the deity intimately associated with both profound destruction and ultimate transformation. It's incredibly symbolic here. Their old life had to be totally destroyed for this new reality to be born.
Oh, that's heavy.
And Baidyanath Dham, during the month of Sawan, is one of the most chaotic, crowded, and spiritually charged pilgrimage sites in all of India. It's not just a temple, it's a massive swirling sea of humanity, noise, and devotion.
Just picture the sensory overload of this scene. Hundreds of thousands of devotees packed together. Shalini, in her official capacity as the district magistrate, arrives at the temple complex to review the security arrangements.
It's a huge operation.
She rolls up in an official government convoy surrounded by heavy police escorts. The crowd parts for her. People are whispering, "Madam Sahiba has arrived." She represents the absolute zenith of secular authority in this deeply spiritual place.
The visual contrast is almost overwhelmingly stark. You have the ultimate projection of state power moving through a space of ultimate spiritual surrender.
And as she is walking toward the temple stairs, with her security detail trying to clear the path, she notices something out of the corner of her eye. Over by the entrance, there is a man sitting on a small wooden board fitted with cheap wheels.
Just dragging himself.
Dragging his body forward using only his hands. His clothes are completely torn. His face is smeared with the dust of the road. He's begging for coins. And Shalini stops dead in her tracks.
The world just stops.
The police try to usher her forward, but she is frozen. She looks closer, and her entire world drops out from under her. It's Raghav.
The man who literally financed her ascent to power is now collecting copper coins in the dirt at her feet.
She slowly removes her sunglasses. Her hands are visibly trembling. She whispers, "Raghav." At the second he hears that specific voice, he freezes.
He recognizes it instantly.
He looks up, sees her surrounded by police, and what does he do? He immediately lowers his gaze in shame and desperately tries to push his little wooden cart away. He tries to disappear into the crowd.
He's terrified.
But Shalini ignores her security detail. She ignores the whispers of the thousands of people watching, and she just drops to her knees right there in the dirty temple road. Now, Raghav says something to her in this moment that stopped me in my tracks.
Yeah, this line is incredible.
He stammers, "Madam, please don't sit here. Your clothes will get dirty."
That single line contains the entire psychological history of their relationship.
Right. Like, is he still trying to protect her, slipping right back into the role of the caretaker? Or is he just completely consumed by the humiliation of his own reality?
It's a tragic intersection of both, really. But the instinct to protect her clearly overrides everything else.
You think so?
Absolutely. Even in his most vulnerable, exposed, humiliating moment, his very first impulse is to maintain the boundary that keeps her elevated. Notice he calls her Madame.
Not Shalini.
Right. He doesn't use her name. He is actively acknowledging her supreme status and trying to preserve the narrative that they inhabit two entirely separate, incompatible worlds. He's trying to save her from the scandal of being associated with the street beggar.
He's still sacrificing his own comfort for her public image, but Shalini is completely breaking down. She's crying, demanding to know what he's done to his life and why he lied to her all those years ago.
She wants answers.
And right before Raghav can attempt to spin another lie to push her away again, a temple priest who has witnessed this whole exchange steps forward.
And this third-party intervention is the catalyst that forces the truth into the light.
The priest asks the DM if she knows this beggar. She nods. And the priest drops a revelation that completely shatters the illusion.
It changes everything.
He tells her he has been sitting here in the dust for the last 5 years, but he keeps almost nothing for himself. Every single coin people give him. He donates to the local schools for the education of poor girls.
Unbelievable.
And he adds, he constantly tells everyone he is incredibly proud of his wife because she became a high-ranking officer.
The sheer magnitude of that revelation is staggering. It fundamentally rewrites a decade of Shalini's personal history in a matter of seconds.
It means Raghav didn't just sacrifice his marriage 10 years ago to give her a clean break. He literally dedicated his entire subsequent existence, suffering in the absolute shadows, to the very cause that Shalini represents: female education, female ambition.
He essentially built a living shrine to her success inside his own mind. Every single coin he collected in the dirt and gave away to a schoolgirl was a validation of the brutal choice he made.
Wow.
He lost his legs, he lost the love of his life, he lost his dignity in the eyes of society. But through this agonizing daily ritual, he ensured that the dream they shared survived.
Hearing this truth absolutely obliterates the foundation of Shalini's entire worldview. All of that spite, all of that deeply held anger that fueled her massive career rocket ship, it evaporates instantly.
It has to.
She is forced to immediately redefine who actually holds the true power in their dynamic.
Because in a fraction of a second, the woman with the heavily armed police escort and the supreme government title realizes that the crippled man begging in the dust possesses a moral authority that is infinitely more powerful than anything she has achieved.
Which launches us into the climax of the narrative, the reclamation. Shalini finally understands the lie was a shield, meticulously forged to protect her future.
The truth is out.
So right there, in the shadow of the temple of Mahadev, in front of hundreds of stunned devotees and her very confused security detail, she reaches out and firmly grabs Raghav's dirt-covered hands. She turns to her officers and delivers a very simple, paradigm-shifting order. Bring the car.
There's zero hesitation. She is pulling him back across the boundary he tried to enforce.
None at all. Raghav, still desperately trying to play the protector, protests. He asks her what society will say, what the newspapers will write if they see the prestigious district magistrate's husband looking like a filthy beggar.
He's still worried about society.
Still. And Shalini delivers the absolute core message of this entire account. She looks at him and says, "Society didn't make me an officer. You did. And from today, I am not just the district magistrate. I am your wife and your debtor."
To publicly claim the title of his debtor is a fascinating and deliberate choice of words.
So what does this all mean? When I read the word debtor, I viewed it as this massive emotional ledger finally being balanced out in the open.
That's a great way to put it.
For 10 long years, society told Shalini she owed her immense success solely to her own brilliant hard work and that her ex-husband was just toxic dead weight she had thankfully dropped.
The societal narrative was entirely skewed.
But in that exact moment, she publicly audits and rewrites the ledger. This wasn't just a rescue mission to get a disabled man off the streets. It was a profound, highly public acknowledgement of his invisible labor.
It brings the concept of the emotional venture capitalist full circle, but with the added weight of profound gratitude. She is publicly acknowledging the invisible seed capital that built her entire empire.
Yeah.
By calling herself his debtor, she is explicitly rejecting this shallow societal narrative that measures a person's worth only by their physical capability or their financial wealth. She's looking at a man society deemed worthless and saying, "My power is actually your power."
She physically lifts him up. She takes him home in her official state-sanctioned car. She secures the best medical treatment for him. She publicly declares this man, who the world ignored as a street beggar, as the greatest hero of her life.
It's incredible.
And the accounts note that today there is a prominent board at that very temple promoting girls' education, fully funded and installed by Shalini in Raghav's name.
This raises an important question about the overarching theme of justice. We often think of justice as a purely legal process, something immediate, punitive, and decided by a human judge.
Right, like in a courtroom.
But this narrative proposes a much more cosmic view of justice, what the story refers to as the silent court of Mahadev.
The silent court. Let's push that further. How does the silent court operate differently than the ones Shalini presides over?
Well, it implies that the universe, or fate, has a way of quietly balancing the scales over long stretches of time. Raghav's silent, agonizing sacrifice wasn't ignored by the universe. It was held in trust. And the timing is the critical component here.
The timing is everything. Because think about it, if fate had revealed this truth to Shalini 5 years earlier, before she passed her exams, what would have happened?
She would have derailed completely.
She would have immediately quit her studies out of guilt to take care of him. The revelation would have actively destroyed the very sacrifice Raghav made. Fate had to hold on to the truth until they were both actually ready to survive it.
That's exactly it.
The timing had to be perfect when Shalini was finally secure in her power and capable of truly honoring his gift for the healing to actually work.
True justice, in this cosmic sense, isn't about immediate vindication. It's about the strategic revelation of hidden truths that allow for profound healing and the ultimate restoration of dignity.
The restoration of dignity.
Society stripped Raghav of his dignity through vicious gossip, but the court of Mahadev restored it in the most public, undeniable, and permanent way possible.
It really makes you pause and deeply examine the invisible architecture of your own life. For everyone listening to this right now, I want you to think about the foundation of your own achievements. Think about the raw halves in your life.
Those hidden supporters.
Who are the people operating in the background, making quiet, uncelebrated, entirely invisible sacrifices just so that you can shine a little bit brighter? We rarely notice the concrete foundation when we're busy admiring the view from the top of the skyscraper.
We are all, in some capacity, deeply indebted to the unseen sacrifices of others. Recognizing that doesn't diminish our own hard work, it simply grounds us in reality.
It absolutely does. And it leaves us with this incredible lingering thought to mull over as we wrap up. I want you to ask yourself, if you found out today that the greatest heartbreak of your entire life, the sharpest betrayal that kept you up at night, the burning anger that fueled your hardest work, was actually a secret act of intense love, meticulously designed to protect you, how would that change the way you view your own success?
It completely reframes your entire existence. It turns your deepest pain into your greatest gift.
It really does. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. Keep questioning the surface of things, keep looking for those hidden emotional ledgers, and keep seeking out the deeper, silent stories operating right behind the everyday lives around you. Catch you on the next deep dive.